Hello everyone, welcome to our part 2 for how to make the perfect jollof. But in this case, it's not just about the perfect jollof, it's about that game changer jollof that will get everyone talking. The first thing I'm going to introduce you to is the rice. I'm using basmati rice here, but feel free to use your short grain rice, long grain rice, whichever one you can find, and that works fine. I'm also going to be using margarine, okay? Feel free to replace that with butter. I'm using goat meat as one of the proteins for this recipe. I love how goat meat has a very strong flavor and it's actually one of my favorite proteins to pair with jollof. I prefer to use this than use chicken. Personal preference, okay? I have my chili flakes, I have my tomatoes. This is one of the reasons why I say you want to reduce the quantity of your tomatoes because we're still going to use a lot of it in this recipe. Here I have a mix of blended spices. I'm going to tell you what that is in the cook. And now I'm going to be using some prawns because again, it's not game changer jollof for nothing. We're going to be using some flavors that are going to be so good. And here we have our tomato paste, right? You can use the tomato that you get from sachets or your tinned tomatoes. I'm also going to be adding sweet corn. You're going to also see how that is going to go in. Right? Now, if you have the sweet corn that is still on the cob, that is absolutely perfect. You can just use that, right? And now we have our onions. You want to dice up your onions. If you have brown onions, I would prefer that, okay? Now I have honey. Honey is going to at some point come in this cook. And of course, your flavored oil. At this point, if you've not made your flavored oil, better hurry and go and make it. It's so good. You're also going to have a combination of herbs, thyme, fresh curry leaves, fresh parsley, all of the works. Get them ready. We're about to cook, okay? And also, if you have dried herbs, it's okay to use that. The first thing I'm going to do right now is to season my prawns, okay? And that's why I have that bowl in front of me. You're going to put your prawns into a bowl. What you want to do first is to make sure that your prawns have been cleaned and deveined. If you don't know how to do this, don't worry. I'm going to show you a video as the class goes on how to devein your prawn. So properly devein your prawn and your shrimp. Okay, it's just taking out the guts from the fish. Deveining your prawn is very important so you don't have those bits inside when you're eating. And then I have my powder mix. It has some kashmiri pepper, chili pepper, paprika, and a little bit of seasoning cube. That's what's here. I'm just going to put that together. It also has a mix of ginger, onion, garlic powder, right? And now my seasoning is going in. I'm precisely using my crayfish seasoning cube here. Now add your all-purpose oil, or you can also use your flavored oil. Remember I said flavored oil is very important, so you're just going to put that in. Now the reason I'm putting the oil here now is because I'm actually not deep frying. I'm just going to put this in my air fryer, okay, to grill. If you're going to deep fry, of course you probably will not need your flavored oil at this point. So what you will just do is take your pan, put it over your heated gas cooker, and then just pour a little bit of that. You don't have to deep fry your prawns. Just need to put a little bit of that on your heated pan and then just fry your prawns in it. And that's how to use your flavor oil that you've already made. Next is the side for the jollof. We're not going to be putting the sweet corn inside the jollof. It's going to be like a side, okay? So what you want to do is to get your sweet corn. I did mention that you can use this corn that is still on the cob, right? That's also perfect. And we're just going to put this in my baking sheet, also in a baking pan. I'm going to put in a bit of butter or margarine and a little bit of honey, right? And then you're going to grill this. That's all you're doing here. But what this does is it's going to bring out that lovely sugars from the sweet corn, right? It's not regular corn, so if you want to get the sweet corn that's already in the can, right, store-bought, or simply just buy your sweet corn that's still on the cob, right, and grill it like that with the cob, right? So you're just going to put in your butter, your honey, mix everything together, and that is also going to go into the air fryer, okay? If you don't have an air fryer, what you want to do, right, is to just melt your butter and your honey on heat, right? You want to melt the butter first. As soon as the honey goes in, stir everything together and pour it all over your sweet corn, and that's it. That's all. What the air fryer is going to do, however, is to add a bit of char, right, which is also going to add another different color, okay? And that's why if you can get the one on the cob, it's just so easy because you can just roast that over open fire. Just boil it, right? Bring it out. That's if you don't have an air fryer, right? So just boil it, bring it out, melt your butter on heat, add your honey, take it out, and then brush that all over your cob, okay? And then just put that over your gas stove, right? Just put it over your burner and burn it for a bit, and that's it. This is just going to serve as a side. The way you have salad just be on the side of your jollof. That's what this is going to represent. Now that we have all of that taken out of the way, it's time to go main into our cooking. The first thing you want to do is to boil your proteins. Here I'm using goat's meat, like I said. So if you're using chicken or turkey, that's what you want to start boiling at this point. And I would say that you shouldn't add water to your protein yet. That's because your meats, your beef, your goat's meat, your chicken, they contain at least 60% water. And under the right conditions, if your heat is low, they can actually cook themselves with the water that they possess. Okay, the only reason we sometimes add water is because you want to get that broth, that stock from it. So what you want to do whenever you're boiling your meat or your protein, right, is just put it in. If you notice and look at that pot right now, I'm not even done putting things in. You can already see water. And when I was adding it, there was no water in that pot, right? And that's just the beauty of it. I'm adding some of the herbs that I use in making my flavored oil. So you can notice that they're a bit dried, right? But that's because I want to also add that flavor into this. And then I'm going to put in onions. I'm going to put in my seasoning cube. You can choose to use what you want here. If you have a goat meat seasoning, that's fine. If you have beef, right, or you have an all-purpose seasoning, that can work in this case. So you're just going to sprinkle that over, and then you're going to add your chili flakes. You can also use atarodo in place of your chili flakes. That also works. I always love to boil my meat with a bit of spice because I believe the meat itself should have some depth of flavor and not just taste of just beef. But you don't want to do too much so that you don't take over the real flavor of that beef, right? And you're going to allow this to cook until you can see the water from the meat, right? And just look at that. You're going to see the water coming slowly, right? So just cover the pot and I'll show you what it looks like in the next 5 minutes. So we're going to open that pot up. Wow, just look at all that steam. So that's all that water, guys. This is just so good. And now you can now add your water. So once you have the water in the pot, right, that has been generated from the goat's meat or your beef or chicken or turkey, you can now put in your water. Depending on the quantity of your meat, you don't want to drown your meat in too much water because it's going to make the stock not concentrated. And when it's not concentrated, you don't get enough flavor from it. So you don't want a case that you put in so much water that you cannot even see what you're cooking at all, right? So let it just be a little above the meat and cook on low heat and you'll be good to go. So cover this up. It's going to take about 30 to 35 minutes to get cooked. But if it's fresh meat, it will take you just 20 to 25 minutes. Now, because we're cooking jollof, we're not going to use just any regular pot. We're going to use our aluminium pot. So if you have one, that is lovely, but feel free to use whatever pot you have. I just love to be dramatic sometimes just to get back that nostalgia. So now that I have my pot, I've also poured in my flavored oil. I'm not using regular grade vegetable oil. We didn't do all that work just to be using vegetable oil to cook, right? So using for your flavored oil, I'm going to fry some onions and I want to fry this until translucent. Now, what does translucent mean? Translucent basically means that you have the sugars in the onions activated, right? So if you look at what the onions look like now, it's still looking purple, it's still looking strong and hard. But once it begins to fry and it looks like as if the onions is shining or is glistering or it's looking like it's almost transparent, that's what we mean by fry until your onions is translucent. It's not brown, it's just looking like it's shining. That's it. So when we get to that stage, we continue. Usually, depending on the heat you're cooking at, and I want to assume you're cooking on medium to low heat, this is going to take you about 5 minutes, right? And now our tomato paste is going to go in. Just look at that vibrant color of the tomato paste. Now, I would say to you, right, for your tomato paste, try as much as possible to read the ingredients. There are a lot of tomato brands out there, tomato paste brands that actually use flour as the major component, right, than tomatoes. So please read this guy. Read your labeling on your brands when you're buying them. Now you want to allow this to be frying on medium heat and not longer low heat. And the trick of frying this and knowing when it's done is you'll see the difference between that and now. It's going to go from the bright red to deep red. And also you're going to notice the oil, right? At first it looks like the oil is separated from the tomato paste. But when you fried it for about 10 minutes on medium heat, you'd realize that everything is now mixed together. You don't have that separation happening anymore. And the one important thing that I love is look at how the granules are looking all together, okay? And it's glistering. It's looking like it's toasted and fried. That's how you know that your tomatoes is ready. And you can also taste at this point, right? When you taste it, you will notice that it is not that acidic anymore. It's not sour, right? So make sure you fry this until that sourness go. If it's still tasting sour, then you're not done frying. Don't increase the heat, right? Reduce it, then it may probably mean your heat is too high and it's just going brown too fast. Once we have this ready, it's now time to add our tomato paste that we made earlier. So to prepare the room for the tomato paste to come in, more herbs are going to go into my pot. And now our guy is going to make an appearance. Now look at the color of this guy. And you will notice that using your tatashe just makes it really red. And of course, that's beetroot. Guys, so if it's something you've never tried before, you need to try it out and see the difference. That beetroot is just going to take you from 0 to 100. And using more tatashe, I mean, look at the color of our tomato and look at what is also on the pot. This looks even more vibrant. This is how you know you've made the really perfect jollof base. So we're going to scoop all of that in, and then you're going to stir everything together. You're going to make sure you mix it well, allow this to fry, and you'll notice how the oil is just at the bottom. So again, just like the smell and the look of a thing can tell you when it's ready, right? When the oil begins to float on top of the sauce and you don't have some oil just gathering at the bottom, that's how you know that your sauce is good and ready. So make sure to stir it together really well. Now, the best thing is that we had already cooked this. So when you're toasting your tomatoes and peppers, you usually were cooking it, just that you had a different method. So this is going to take like 5-10 minutes. It shouldn't take too long until you begin to see that it's good. But let's check on our meat right now to see how it's doing. So I'm just going to open up that pot and see how it's looking like. Wow, this looks good. So this took again about 25 minutes. That's because it was fresh goat's meat. But if it's not fresh, right, it's going to take you sometimes even 40 minutes depending on that. And I love to always boil my meat until it's literally falling apart from the bone, right? So that's how you know it is well cooked. Okay, so this is again to your preference. If you prefer it to just be cooked, so you don't want it to be overly soft, and that's fine. You can take it out when it's looking like that. This stock that is in this pot is going to go into our jollof, so don't throw that away. What you want to do is just pass that through a sieve and it should be good and ready. And now I'm going to be heading back to our pot to see what it looks like. Are we ready? Are you ready? So open that up and voila. You can already see the way the oil is now floating on top. That is exactly what it should look like. And then I'm just going to put in that goat's meat stock. Yes, just pour in that. Notice that there are no particles inside because I've already passed this through a sieve. I don't want particles in my jollof rice. I'm going to pour that in and then stir everything together. And now it's time to add the rice. I'm cooking with basmati rice, and this particular cup here is about 6 cups of rice, okay? And when I say cup of rice, I'm referring to proper baking measurement cups, okay? So if you don't have that, please go and get it, because sometimes we just use regular cups and then when we don't get the measurement, it seems as if the measurement was wrong. Get the correct measurement cups and then you can measure correctly. Now, I always love, right, that my rice goes into my pot so I can see the sauce level to the rice level. If you think your sauce is too much, it's always best to scoop out some sauce out, okay? And then add it in after the rice has gone in. So just take out some sauce and put that into your plate and then see how the rice interacts with the sauce. If it's looking like it is not enough, then you can add more. But then this is it, right? If you want to do something, do it well. If you want to cook this grand jollof, do it well. This grand jollof is red, is saucy. It's not the jollof that looks whitish. I'm talking about the kind of jollof that is red all through. So this sauce is definitely how you want it to look. This is the quantity of sauce you're going to need to get that jollof looking really good. Notice how the sauce alone covers all of this. This is how you can cook your jollof with just the sauce alone without adding too much water. When you begin to add a lot of water and dilute the sauce and it begins to look washed out, that's when your jollof is going to give up concoction vibes and not the actual jollof. So notice how I put in the stock, poured on the rice, and now I'm going to add a little bit of water to that and cover this up. Let it cook on really low heat, the lowest heat you can find. I know some of us are used to cooking jollof rice over firewood and you see that high heat happening, But if you know and watch the women who cook this rice, it gets to a point, you know what they do? They begin to remove that firewood that is bringing in so much fire. They take it out and allow just the little one that is burning finely to cook the rice. That's really what makes the jollof really good. Not where the fire is burning very, very aggressively. That's not what cooks it. Okay, and now I added some stock water, and this can be made on the go, right? If you notice that you don't have stock, let's say you are making jollof and what you want to use is fish. Okay, what you can quickly do is get your chicken stock or your beef stock, dissolve it in water, and then use that in cooking. So that way you have your stock water available, right? You can then add some other things to it, a little bit of oyster sauce. You can make your stock. Those are very quick hacks on how to make your stock. I decided to take out some of these herbs, right? Because all the leaves have already gone into my food and it's good and ready to come out. For the others, I'm going to leave it in just so you can continue cooking. Now I'm going to add my fresh bell peppers because I want the sweetness of the bell peppers, the fruitiness of the bell peppers to also be infused into this rice. Because remember, we're making game changer jollof, the one that nobody can have anywhere else, the one that only you can make. So I'm putting both red, I'm putting green. I love the flavor it adds to the rice, and this is going to slowly cook. So imagine all of that freshness from the bell pepper, you have that fruitiness and sweetness from it, just nicely being infused into that jollof. Of course, it's a game changer. And now it's time to cover it up with foil. I'm just going to get my foil to cover that up. So at this point, please already lower your heat. You don't want anything catching fire, right? So you're going to put your foil over, and I'm just going to make sure that you clip it around the edges of the pot. And then you're just going to allow this to cook for at least 25 to 30 minutes, depending on the quantity of rice. To check on that later. And of course, one of the perfect pair for jollof rice is plantains. So I'm frying some plantains by the side, as you can see me do here. I'm just going to put this in a paper towel, allow it to turn brown, right? And then take it out and you're good to go. Now it's time for the reveal. Let's check our pot to see what it looks like after about 20 to 30 minutes. Just look at that. That is how to make the perfect game changer jollof. Just look at how that looks. And now it's time to stir. Let's see what the underneath looks like. At this point, the water should have gone out, right? You might have a little burning happening at the bottom, but that's fine. A little, not so much. Just look at that. Now tell me you don't want to just put this into your plate and start eating now, right? When you begin to stir your jollof and you're noticing that some parts are white, then something was off. Either the mixing wasn't done properly or you didn't use enough sauce, okay? So you want to just mix everything up together and then stir. The ones at the bottom, bring them to the top. The one at the top, take them to the bottom. That's the whole purpose of stirring, because you want to make sure that all the seeds are cooked evenly. That's when you realize some people would cook jollof, right? And you realize, if you've ever experienced it, okay, where it seems like all the seeds are not cooked fully. So you notice some parts are cooked, some parts are not cooked well. It's because during the cooking process, after it gets to this point, you want to turn it properly, right? And ensure that all the parts are getting adequate heat, the same amount of heat, and are going to cook evenly, right? So I'm taking out all the stock, right, from the herbs I put in. Notice how they went in with leaves and now they're coming out just plain stems, right? That's how to know that all of its leaves have been infused. Look at our bell peppers. They still retain the color. This can only happen if you cook with low heat. If you cook your bell peppers and it's looking like they have completely changed color, the red is not ready and the green is not greening, then it means you have overcooked, and you don't want to do that. Again, low heat is just the key to having really flavorful cooking. Now, ladies and gentlemen, just look at that. You're going to now taste, right? You want to taste for flavor, and at this point you're going to add in all the things, and this is just mainly for garnish, okay? Just to replicate again some of those flavors that some of us grew up having and authentic jollof used to have, okay? You're going to put in some fresh tomatoes. You can put in some fresh onion. I don't like onion. I don't like seeing fresh onion, but I just put it because, again, there's something about the freshness of putting vegetables, right? Those tomatoes, fresh onion is going to have effects in your meal. So even if you don't like eating it, just like me, just putting that is going to infuse some flavor. You don't have to eat it. You can just eat the rice by itself, okay? But adding it is very important just to give you that freshness, okay? And last but not the least is your margarine or butter, right? Preferably butter. That would add more flavor. And if you're using margarine, make sure to use a little, not too much. depending on how you have flavored your rice. You know, some margarine can be salty. So please, again, read your labels, read your labels, read your labels. And it's very important, okay? For your butter, at this point, I would say you should put unsalted butter if you're using butter, right? Again, depending on the flavor, if you notice that your rice is already properly flavored, you've already had all the salt you need, then use unsalted butter. If you think it still needs more salt, then you can use salted butter. I'm just taking out as much herbs as I can because I don't want people having to pull that out of their food. So yeah, that's it. Can we get a drum roll? Or maybe we should wait until you see the final plating. So that's it. Your jollof is ready. Now get out your serving bowl. I'm going to serve this family style, no fine dining, just family lovely style. It's just how beautiful the steam is just showing through the phone. And now our grilled prawns going to make an appearance. And have you wondered what we did with the goat meat? So this is what I did, okay? I just air fried that, which you can also fry in oil. I added some of that jollof base to the goat meat and air fried it. So what you can do in this case is, you see that jollof base that you fried, just save some of it and just put your fried goat meat inside. Allow it to sit while the jollof is cooking. And guys, this is what we have. Our game changer jollof is ready. It's looking good. Serve your family this and they would never forget that you attended Omayeko summer class. Bye.